Let's go read a book today.
Hello, my little friends. Thank you so much for joining me here on this episode of Let's Go Read a Book Today, where I, Miss Pamela, share some wonderful stories with you right here in my little reading garden. And oh, do I have a great story for you today. But first, I have to ask, do you know what time it is?
It's time for Word of the Day.
Hey there, my brilliant people. I'm Miss Vocab. That's short for Miss Vocabulary. And I have the word of the day for you, where we learn a new word that helps you grow our vocabulary and our minds. So, our word of the day is worry. What does that mean, you ask? Well, I'll tell you what it means. To worry is to feel anxious or troubled or uneasy. Worry. Hey, why don't you try and use this new word, worry, in a sentence this week when you're talking to your parents or your friends or even your pet armadillo. Because the more you use it, you'll never lose it. I'll see you next time on the Word of the Day. Now, let's get back to some reading. Thank you, Miss Vocab. Okay, I am so excited to introduce you to a very special new friend in our story today titled The Hand Hug, written by Niki and illustrated by Devio Studio. Well, are you ready to read? I am. So sit back and open your minds because here comes story time. The Hand Hug, written by Niki Spears, illustrated by Devio Studio. Baelor awoke suddenly at the sound of her alarm clock. She had stayed up late the night before, worrying about her first day at her new school. She felt sleepy and groggy. As Baelor brushed her teeth, she noticed worry bubbles hovering above her head. These bubbles seemed to appear whenever she felt frightened or nervous. Today, the bubbles were dark and made her feel gloomy.
I hope people will like me. Oh no, who will sit with me at lunch?
She worried whether or not the kids at her new school would like her. And the more she worried, the more other worrisome thoughts popped into her head. More worry bubbles appeared over breakfast. They grew bigger and darker like a thunderstorm blocking the sunshine from her day.
I hate oatmeal. A bad breakfast means a bad day.
Baelor was so troubled that she didn't even notice when her mom said good morning. Suddenly, the school bus pulled up outside. Baelor grabbed her backpack, kissed her mom on the cheek, and ran out the door. Baelor thought that if she ran fast enough, she could outrun the worry bubbles. But the bubbles moved so fast that they kept up with her.
I'm going to be late on my first day.
Good morning, Miss Baelor. Welcome to Sunshine Public Schools,
said the bus driver as Baelor boarded the bus. Baelor was so nervous she didn't even notice the bus driver's warm welcome. While the other children laughed and talked to one another, Baelor sat alone, so there was plenty of room for her large worry bubbles to settle down beside her.
No one wants to sit with me. I hate this bumpy bus ride.
During math class, Baelor doodled quietly, trying to ignore her worry bubbles while Miss Thomas introduced the lesson of the day.
I hate math. I'll never be good at this.
Baelor,
Miss Thomas said suddenly. Baelor jumped at the sound of her name. Only then did she notice that all the students had left for their next class. Baelor, can I see you for a moment? Miss Thomas asked. Baelor walked over to Miss Thomas's desk, trying to avoid making eye contact.
Oh no, I'm in trouble.
Miss Thomas reached out her hands and invited Baelor to place her hands gently inside her own. As she stared into Baelor's eyes, she asked, "Are you worried, Baelor?" Baelor was shocked because no one had noticed her worry bubbles the entire day. How could her teacher see them? As Baelor's hands lay gently in Miss Thomas's, the worry bubbles slowly began to melt away. Miss Thomas softly squeezed Baelor's hands and asked, "Do you feel that?" "Yes," Baelor nodded. A refreshing feeling of peace filled her entire body, and a sweet smile came over her face. "This is a hand hug," Miss Thomas explained as she continued to embrace Baelor's hands. Miss Thomas's eyes sparkled like diamonds. Baelor could see and feel the warmth and kindness extending from both their hands. "A hand hug?" Baelor asked curiously. Hand hugs bring your mind back into the present moment, and all the worry bubbles fade away. My teacher used to give me hand hugs whenever I was worried. "I like hand hugs," Baelor said with a smile. The hand hug felt so comforting that Baelor didn't want it to end. "I sometimes have worry bubbles myself," Miss Thomas added. "We all do, Baelor." "You do?" Baelor asked, a little surprised. Her teacher seemed so happy. Baelor couldn't imagine her worrying about anything. "Baelor, our minds are like computers filled with thousands of thoughts. Some of our thoughts are bad, like a computer virus. We tell ourselves things that are simply not true, like, 'I'll never be able to do this,' or 'I shouldn't have done that.' You can learn to talk back to pesky thoughts." "Whenever I get worried, I ask myself these questions," Miss Thomas said, pointing to a bright yellow card taped to her computer. Baelor stared at the questions and imagined that she was looking straight at her worry bubbles and asking the questions out loud. "Does this thought make me feel good? Is this thought true? Can I look at this person or situation in a different way?" Fill your mind, your computer system, with positive thoughts, and positive things will flow into your mind, Miss Thomas said. She slowly let go of Baelor's hands. "Would you like to take a hand hug with you?" she asked. Baelor nodded curiously, wondering how she could possibly take her teacher's hands with her. Miss Thomas took out a notebook from her desk drawer. On the cover, the words, "My Hand Hugs," were written across the top. "This little notebook is a reminder of all the good things in my life, Baelor. Whenever I get worried, I draw a hand hug and write down all the things I am grateful for inside. You should try it." Miss Thomas pulled out an empty notebook, and Baelor quickly traced her first hand hug. "This is what I want you to do," said Miss Thomas. "For the rest of the day, pay close attention to people and things that make you feel good. Then write them down inside your hand hug. Make a habit of doing this every day and look at your hand hug every time those pesky worry bubbles appear. Would you like to give it a try?" "Yes, I would," Baelor said with excitement. "Baelor, your thoughts are not a part of you unless you give them permission to come in," Miss Thomas added. "Once you allow them in, they will tell you how you should feel. So remember, Your thoughts take place in your head, but your feelings are in your heart. When Baelor hopped on the school bus in the afternoon, the bus driver greeted her.
Hello, Miss Baelor. I hope you had a great first day,
he said as he opened the doors to allow the students to get on.
I have a special seat for my new passenger. Why don't you sit in the VIP seat behind me, Baelor? VIP stands for Very Important Passenger, he explained. You successfully completed your first day of school. I think that's pretty important.
Once Baelor was seated, she grabbed her notebook and wrote 2 things inside her hand hug. My bus driver and sitting in the VIP seat on the bus. Melissa, a girl from her class, sat next to her. They laughed and chatted. Baelor kept her notebook in her lap, waiting for her next happy moment. As the bus pulled up to Melissa's street, they said their goodbyes, and Baelor quickly wrote, making new friends, inside her hand hug. When Baelor got off the bus near her house, she felt peaceful and relaxed, very different from how she felt in the morning. There were no longer any worry bubbles hovering above her head. Suddenly, a beautiful butterfly fluttered by. Baelor had never seen such vibrant colors before. She chased the butterfly as it danced in the air and flew around her, always just a little out of reach. Later, Baelor wrote, beautiful butterflies, inside her hand hug. By the end of the day, Baelor's first hand hug was completely full. She had added, Mom, Dad, my dogs, my grandparents, Mom's homemade banana bread, hand hugs, Miss Thomas, and music. Baelor couldn't believe how many good things had happened already. Her worry bubbles had faded away. They popped up from time to time, but when they did, she grabbed her hand hug and was reminded of all the good things in her life. The next day, Baelor couldn't wait to start her day. She was ready to write down all the things that made her happy inside her hand hug.
I hope Mom makes oatmeal this morning. I have an idea.
At breakfast, Baelor thanked her mom for the oatmeal she made. May I add strawberries and bananas? She asked. That's a great idea, said her mom. I think I'll do the same. For the first time in weeks, Baelor's mom sat down at the table to have breakfast with her. Baelor couldn't wait to add this special moment to her hand hug. When Baelor boarded the bus driver smiled and said, Good morning. How are you, Miss Baelor? I feel great, Baelor said with a smile. As Baelor looked for an empty seat, she noticed a little girl sitting alone with a worried look on her face. The little girl's shoulders slumped over as she stared down at the floor. Baelor was very familiar with that look because it was the same look she had worn the day before. Baelor decided to sit down next to the little girl. Hello, I'm Baelor. What's your name? The little girl slowly looked up and glanced into Baelor's eyes. Without saying a word, Baelor extended her hands and invited the little girl to place her hands in her own. Do you feel that? Baelor asked. That's a hand hug.
Good for you, Baelor. What a great example of how to be a helpful young human. You know, there may be times that you have your own worry bubbles or negative thoughts that you just can't seem to get rid of. But it is great to know that just like Baelor, you can also think of all the wonderful things in your life, no matter how small, and leave those worry bubbles behind you forever. I hope you never forget that. Oh, and now one other thing that we never want to forget are the incredible creators of this fantastic book. the author for the wonderful words that become the story that help to grow our mind, and the illustrator for all of the amazing pictures throughout the book that delight our eyes. So Niki Spears and Devio Studio, we just have one thing to say to you.
Thank you for writing this book and opening a whole new world.
Well, it seems that's all the time we have for reading together today. Oh, but don't you worry, because I'll join you here again. Yep, right here in my little reading garden on our next episode of Let's Go Read a Book Today. And I so look forward to seeing you again. So until the next time we meet, don't you forget, keep reading. Bye.
I'm just happy you've joined me to read today. Oh yeah, I'm just happy you've joined me to read today.